Hi, everyone. Welcome to our first Club CX Masterclass. I'm Mary. Leslie has a medical appointment. She'll be back for the next event. Today, we're having Ashley Ward join us to talk about customer marketing, reporting to customer success instead of marketing. And yeah, let's welcome Ashley.
Thank you, Mary. I cannot share my screen. Do you want to share the slides or do you want to give me permission?
I want to give you permission.
Okay.
Okay, let's see if
Okay.
that works.
Okay. Also, I've never presented in presenter mode before, but I really need presenter mode. So let's see
I don't
what
know.
you all see. Okay. You guys can just see the slide.
Yes,
Okay. I think I'm good to go then.
it looks so pretty.
Thank you to Leslie.
Oh,
Okay. So here you go. I think Mary just kind of covered what is supposed to go here. I will talk about a lot of things. I forgot to update this agenda slide, but I will talk about a little bit about my background, who I am, where I work, kind of why we're talking about customer success versus marketing. And then I'll talk about kind of how I run my program, some of the pros and cons of being in customer success. And I'll also talk about scaling and how I think about scaling all of our programs. I'm Ashley Ward, Director of Customer Marketing at LeanData. I've spent over 14 years in different customer-facing roles. I started my career in sales, literally like feet on the street, walking into small businesses, selling advertising. And I quickly found that I had the most success in my career when I worked with my existing customers to build relationships with them and to grow them. I dreaded working with new people or trying to sell brand new people, just like wasn't my thing, but I loved all of my customers. I had great relationships and I was pretty good at growing my accounts. And so I knew that that was kind of my sweet spot and what I wanted to focus on. I eventually found my way into like client services and customer success, which I felt like was a better fit for that reason. And then I spent the last 8 years in customer marketing. So I'll kind of go into my background and what that looks like. So I've been at LeanData for 4 years, but before I was at LeanData, I spent 6 years at a company called BlueJeans, which is a video conferencing platform. We were the first like major platform similar to Zoom, but we were around before Zoom. When I started working at BlueJeans, Zoom was like, we called them the ankle biter. We were like, oh, Zoom, nobody will ever start using that. So Verizon acquired Zoom or acquired BlueJeans in 2020, and they actually just announced that they're completely shutting it down. So very sad, but I spent 6.5 years there. So I want to start with a little bit of history because I think this helps to share kind of my mindset around customer success and how I eventually came to customer marketing. So when I started working at BlueJeans, I was hired. I had a friend who I'd worked with somewhere else, and she was like, "You've got to come work at this company, work with me." And so we were a small SMB CSM team, just the two of us. It wasn't all SMB. It was just basically accounts that didn't spend a certain amount of money. And we had 600 accounts that we were sharing between the two of us. And our boss basically said, okay, you each, have 300 accounts. How do you manage that many accounts in a scalable way? Go figure it out. And we were like, cool, okay. I want to note that both her and I are in customer marketing now. So it was like the perfect kind of introduction into this like world of one-to-many engagements with customers. So we were really focused at that time on like, okay, how do we onboard new customers? So we started doing webinars or like live meetings that had multiple customers that we scheduled on a weekly basis. We started creating all of our own collateral. So something like this platform, you have your admins that you're working with, but then you also have all of the end users at a company that need to learn how to use this new technology. So we were creating guides and one-pagers, and we were sending out surveys and all of these things just to kind of work with as many customers at the same time as possible. And on top of that, we had zero support from anyone in marketing. Like they were 100% focused on the brand and new business. I don't even know if they knew we existed, but we had no marketing automation. We had no design help. Like we were just doing it all on our own. So we were pretty successful. But like I said, I was there for 6 years. So over time, the customer success org, the company grew, the customer success org grew. I was a CSM for a while. I managed a team. I built a team in APAC. Like I did all kinds of things, but eventually, what's nice about being at a company like that that's growing fast is if you are lucky enough to have leaders who kind of let you find things that you're interested in and do those things. I had that many times at Blue Jeans. So what I was able to do was say like, look, we need to be able to scale customer success. We need to reach as many customers as possible. Let's build a program around that. And so we did, and it was a little bit more formal than what I had started many years ago. We did have more support at this time. And so we built out all kinds of things where we could reach many, if not all of our customers at once. So we had formal training programs. We managed all of our customer communications. We had webinars. We built out a video tutorial site. We had onboarding website, worked with product on ways to change the experience, to increase adoption. We implemented intercoms that we could use in-app messaging and emails, and I really, really loved that. And I loved being part of the customer org. I didn't know anything else. I had a goal that was common to the CSMs, which was to drive adoption and drive net retention. I was super confident because I was a CSM. So I was like, I know exactly what customers need. I know how to deliver this information. I know how to make this better for customers. But there were a lot of things that I wanted to do that were really hard to get across the finish line because I wasn't part of the marketing org. So they sort of held the keys to the website, to emails, marketing automation, design, budget. And so ultimately I made the case for my role to be part of the marketing organization there so that I could be closer to those teams, that I could have a little bit of money, and just do everything that I wanted to do. And so I was there for a while. I absolutely loved it. Over time, the company grew again, kept growing. We had new leadership, new people, new teams, and And at that point, sorry, let me take a step back. Before that happened, while I got into marketing, I was still doing all the life cycle stuff, but then that's when I also started to take on your more traditional customer marketing role that nobody at our company was doing yet. So I started doing case studies. I launched a community. I started doing reviews. So I was doing everything, which is what I loved. But as the company grew, I don't know, my role got like cherry picked. So the customer success team wanted all of the life cycle stuff back. And there was just like all of these things that changed. And ultimately I was like, let me find a job where I can go back to doing everything. And so then that's where I found LeanData. So when I got to LeanData, I started in July of 2019. When I interviewed, I knew that this was a good fit because they were looking for somebody who could run advocacy and really work closely with customer success to drive adoption and growth of their account base. So from the beginning, it was really working pretty equally between the teams. And I could tell in the interview process, there was a really tight partnership that I hadn't really experienced before. And so I knew this was my sweet spot and I jumped on this job. So I reported into the CMO, but I had a dotted line into the chief customer officer. And so I met with them both pretty regularly and equally. And just a few short months in, there were some org changes here where our CMO left. And so they decided not to hire another CMO. Everybody in our marketing org kind of split out to report into the orgs that they supported. So product marketing reported into product, demand gen reported into sales, I reported into customer. And that didn't last for very long. Eventually, we did get a CMO and everybody went back except for me. I was the only person who they felt like, this is a good fit. This is a good partnership. Like, you're doing great. And so let's not change what's working. So I was reporting to our chief customer officer up until last year. She left. At this time, we still don't have a dedicated chief customer officer. We have our chief operating officer is our acting CCO. So I'm reporting into him, but it's still the customer org. It's just he has other people that report into him too. So it's a little different, but pretty much the same. So that's just kind of the reporting structure. But what's been fun is in January 2020, so pretty quickly after I moved into the customer org, we decided that I should kind of take over the customer education team. That was a team of 2 at the time. And I'll talk a lot about why that is, but that was kind of the first shift was, okay, customer education, let's move that into customer marketing. In 2021, I was able to add another customer marketer to the team. I think as our programs grew, one of the things that I don't love about not being part of marketing, kind of what I've already talked about, is like, I work very closely with them, but it's not the same as being on the same team. So where they had marketing operations and they had other coordinators who would set up emails or set up webinars or set up landing pages, all of these things that we were doing on the customer side, I would have to do by myself. So they had a team of like 5 or 8 people helping each other. And for me, it was like, you got to do all this on your own. So eventually I was able to hire somebody to help kind of the day-to-day, like setting everything up, which has been super helpful. And then just last month, I hired a customer demand gen coordinator. So we are now expanding our team to take on upsell and expansion, which we hadn't really focused on before. So I basically am like building out my own little my own like marketing team within the customer team. Her experience is purely demand gen, which is exactly what I want and what I'm looking for. So excited that she's on board now, but my team's growing. And I think the key differences I'll say here, still working in the customer team, but what's different about my experience at my last company is that I do have my own budget. I didn't lose that when I moved to the customer team. I have access to our entire marketing tech stack. So I do have support from people to help, but I have my own access as well. Whereas my prior company, I didn't have that. And I'm pretty closely aligned with marketing here. We're a small company. It's not that hard to be aligned. But I join all of their weekly meetings. We have leadership one-on-ones, things like that. So I think generally, we are pretty aligned with what we're trying to do and how we can support each other. So I want to talk about LeanData quickly because I think it's important to talk about the kind of product that we are and who we're working with. So we're a small company, about 200 employees. What LeanData does is it's a native Salesforce app. So it's something that sits in Salesforce. It connects your tech stack. So it takes all of these, marketing signals that you get from, HubSpot or 6sense or Bombora or whatever, and it turns those into actionable actions that the sales team can take. So basically, we're routing leads or we're routing contacts that are coming in and making sure that your sales team can take action on things that are happening. So the people that we're working with are usually in like revenue operations, sales operations, marketing operations, sometimes sales and marketing leadership. And what I love about this group of people is that I feel like so similar to customer marketers. We're not doing the same job by any means, but they're often like the only person at their company that does what they do, or a very small team, and they're being asked to do a million things all at once, and they're figuring out how to scale. And like just listening to the way that they talk about their roles and their jobs are so similar to what I hear in customer marketing, what I feel in customer marketing. So I have so much empathy for what they're going through and what they're trying to figure out. So I really love the people that we're working with in this space too. All right. So I want to touch on kind of what my experience at both of these companies has kind of been like. When I was in marketing, what my focus was maybe more so, and what I focus on more on the CX side of the house. We call it CX because it's customer success, but it's also professional services, support, education. So I think typically when you're in a marketing organization, you're reporting to a CMO or something of that nature. You're going to be really focused on customer advocacy, right? Your marketing team wants customer stories, customer proof points. They want to be able to hopefully infuse that customer voice into their campaigns and the things that they're doing. They want those G2 reports that they can put out. Like they want that customer advocacy as part of it. So that's always a big focus, I think, for the marketing team. For me, I've also found that like community, networking, those types of things were also really important when I was in marketing org. Events, going to events, making sure that your customers are being, shown love when you go to different trade shows or conferences, things like that. And then expansion revenue. So campaigns to customers, figuring out how to grow your customers. Those have, for me, always been a little bit. I found this on the web. Whoop, sorry. Those have always been a little more important on the marketing side of the house. Now, for me being in CX, I think there's a slightly different mindset. So it's the overall customer experience. How do you make sure that your customers are having a good experience? Are you doing CSAT or NPS or things like that? Adoption, depending on your product and your company, is not always easy to measure, but CX leaders know that adoption leads to retention, which is oftentimes what their primary goal is, or potentially leads to upsell. Again, contributes to NRR, but I think that there's oftentimes this like more mindset of like, let's make sure our customers are successful overall, as opposed to like, let's go set up campaigns to our customers to get them to buy more. And then CX leaders are also really looking at scaling programs, because they not only have marketing, but they're also thinking about how do I keep managing more customers that are coming in without hiring more CSMs? Or how does our, professional services team scale without hiring more people? So I think that there's just a little bit of a different mindset from a CX leader, because they're thinking about their team, they're thinking about the customers, and they're thinking about net retention. And I don't know, my philosophy is that customer marketing can and should be doing all of this, but as one person, it can be challenging. And so I think for me, it's always been this like, how do we figure out what is a priority and when, and where we can make the biggest impact? This role ultimately, at the end of the day, regardless of where you report into, is so cross-functional. So no matter where I sit, My goals and my initiatives that I set for my team are all built around our corporate goals and what best serves our customers. So, we're working with all of these teams, marketing, executives, customer success, professional services. All of these teams are also often touching customers. So it's this balance of like, how do we all make sure that the customer is having the best experience and that we're really working together and we understand what everybody's doing in this, ecosystem here. But also looking at like, what can customer marketing do with customers that can help these other teams potentially scale? So, when we look at marketing, it's like, how do we make sure that the voice of customers is really infused in everything that we do? How can we collaborate on content? How can we do joint campaigns together so that we're not kind of in our own silos building out things, but oftentimes we're collaborating on different campaigns? Customer success, it's like, how do we scale your communications? Oftentimes as a CSM, you're saying the same thing to multiple customers. Is there anything that we can do to help you scale that? If we're doing, one-to-many content or trainings or things like that, how can we make sure that you can leverage those so that you're not getting as many like one-on-one questions or one-on-one requests for information? So you kind of see, I won't go through all of these, but it's really about like, how do we reach as many customers that we can so that we can help scale these teams? So when I think about objectives, I think what I'm thinking about here is like, what are the questions that I keep coming back to when I think about these kind of core pillars? So I'm always thinking about customer loyalty and retention. I'm always thinking about advocacy. And then now we're starting to think a lot more programmatically about expansion. And so what are the questions that I'm trying to answer? And so when I think about loyalty, it's like, how do we maintain and expand relationships with our customers through events, through networking, through executive programs, things like that? Are we listening to our customers? How are we listening to them? Are we actioning on what we're hearing? Because all of that is going to create a more positive experience if we are. And then how do we drive and measure adoption? That's really important for us. Advocacy, are our customers happy? How do we know they're happy? Do we have customer stories to support our sales team and our customer success team? And then how can we provide value to those of our happiest customers? And then when it comes to expansion, this one I've been thinking so much about, because how do you start an expansion program in the middle of an economic time where people are pulling back, people are reducing their workforce, like all of these factors are going in. And so the last thing that we want to do is be like, here, we have a new product. Do you want to buy it? Like, that's a horrible experience. So I'm working with our sales team to kind of shift their focus on like, how do our products and what we do, the people, the products, all of it, like, how do we create more value to our customers in today's economic environment? Because there's a lot we can do to help them, but it's all about like, what value are we bringing to the table to even have people open to having a conversation with us about anything? And I don't know, saying that out loud sounds so simple, but that's not always how our sales reps are talking to customers, even, executives and things like that. So it's just, making sure that we're really mindful about the way that we're approaching this, especially in today's environment. So building a foundation here for me is really about like, what are your customers asking for and what are your internal customers asking for? So the teams that you're supporting, your executives, things like that. So I'm going to really dive in now to how we approach this at LeanData. And so for me, when I started to think about these questions in 2019, what I was able to kind of untangle was we have a really technical audience. These are people who are in operations, they're working in Salesforce. They are used to getting like a lot of training. If you think there's Salesforce certifications, Marketo certifications, they want to really understand how things work, and they want to know all the ins and outs and everything that their products and tools that they use are capable of. So for us, what that meant is we built out a certification program. We really doubled down on that. And even today, that sort of remains like the pinnacle of our programs today. And I'll show you what that looks like. So before I go into that, I want to show this because I think this really captures how I think about customer marketing. And this isn't something that I was able to express or communicate for so long. But once I saw this slide, it like put everything into perspective of kind of why I do things the way that I do. So this slide has been really helpful for me to communicate internally around, sometimes why we're working on certain things and not others. So what you're seeing here is that ultimately customers marketing's job is to turn customers into advocates. That's super important. I think that's what most of us are working on. However, that journey really starts at the beginning and starts at making your customers successful and kind of turning them into or building them into advocates. So, what I like to think about is you wouldn't just, go to a prospect and immediately ask them to buy your product. You're nurturing them, you're giving them information, you're taking them down this funnel. And I think it's the same with advocacy. So oftentimes throughout the years, I've had, sales reps or whoever, like, why don't we have a case study here? Why don't we have more case studies or whatever it might be? And it's just like, or I get sent often, I'm sure everybody does, like, hey, this customer just bought us. It'd make for a great case study. And I'm just like, they just bought us. Like, what would make a great case study there? Like, let's follow up. So I think it's just the idea that like, I want to build these relationships. I want to make sure these customers are successful. And I think maybe what was unique for me, or maybe it's not unique, maybe a lot of people experience this, is that I didn't have a lot of customers being thrown my way. So I didn't have a lot of CSM saying, hey, you should go talk to this person, or this person has a great story, or I had this great conversation and you should talk to them. That wasn't happening for me a lot. And so once we started building out our customer programs and I was able to meet more customers and hear their stories, I realized that like I was going to be most successful if I was creating those opportunities for myself rather than relying on teams to start sending people my way. So that's sort of the thinking here for me.
Ashley?
Yeah.
Yeah. Hi. Sorry. There's a person in chat, AJ, asking a question. I just wanted to run it by you quick. How do you maintain your independence as the voice of the customer and do what's right by them and for them rather than simply trying to upsell, cross-sell them more product to drive revenue?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think there's a couple of things. I think there have definitely been times where I've focused on things that are being asked of me to build trust and to build rapport with other teams. So as an example, when I first started at LeanData, I kind of looked at, okay, where can I make the biggest impact the most quickly? And that was customer stories. They were all kind of outdated and old and whatever. And I don't know, I think I went and I interviewed like 9 or 10 customers. And I put out a lot of case studies in that first like 5 or 6 months because I knew that salespeople love those. Marketing would be happy, CS would be happy. Like it would just kind of make an impact quickly with many people so that people automatically saw like, okay, she knows what she's doing. She's highlighting these great stories. She's making everything look better, feel better. Cool. So that really helped me to build rapport with different groups and stakeholders so that they kind of trusted that I knew what I was doing. The other thing that I do is I'm really focused on driving and sharing data points. So when there are things that I'm doing that maybe other people don't understand. So for example, if I'm, I will talk about this in more detail, but if I'm focused on more life cycle stuff, and then I have sales reps who are like, why don't we have more case studies? I can show them the data that like, hey, we're focused on these different activities and here's what that's driving. It's driving X% in, upsell pipeline or whatever that may look like. So it's also just sharing the data. But I think sometimes it's like an ebb and flow. Sometimes you have to listen to what people are asking for. And, you may have to do things for them so that they trust you and they listen to you. So that you have that freedom to kind of go do the things that you want when you want to. And I think that's especially true for me, where I've been fortunate here at LeanData is with the executive team. So the CEO, who's kind of runs the show here, I think he really trusts that I know what I'm doing. I'm driving results, and I usually have his he usually has my back. And if there are things that he doesn't want me working on or doesn't agree with, I usually am pretty open to his feedback. Does that answer the question?
It does a bit, actually. Thank you. It kind of, yeah, and I guess the reason I ask is, if I look at my last company and indeed previous companies, the last company, customer success, the CSMs kind of owned the customers and were quite protective, but then the sales guys owned customers and were very protective, and then the C-suites were like owned and so you're stuck in the middle, and you're like, right, I can do a customer reference, great, but actually I don't want to talk to just the end user. I need to get a better picture of what is going on in the market. And to my question about, are you genuinely the voice of the customer? In my mind, customer success, customer marketing is all about reflecting what the market needs and being customer orientated. So I can go to my exec team and say, we're not a sales-led organization, we're not a product-led organization, whatever you guys may think, we have to be customer-led, and this is what the customers are asking for. And by the way, our product sucks because we're missing X, Y, and Z, and it's having the ability and the confidence to do that. And I'm just curious as to whether the data points that you collect, how far and wide and extensive you are in actually digging into the customer base to really get a really accurate picture.
Yeah. So I think you'll see a little bit of that in what I'm about to talk about, which is more specific kind of what we're doing. But I think you raise a good point that I'm sure a lot of companies, including us, struggle with, which is who owns the customer. And we're actually very much into this conversation as we start to build out expansion programs. There's some complexity because at the end of the day, sales owns expansion and revenue and opportunities, but oftentimes the CSMs are the ones that have those relationships. And, so it's like, if you're trying to automate anything, how do you balance that? And then you have executive programs happening where like our CEO wants to meet customers, and you have certain sales reps who don't want that to happen because they want to control that. And you have other sales reps who are like, yeah, please. So there's definitely this, ongoing conversation. And we've started to say internally that like no one person or team owns the customers. They are our customers. They're LeanData's customers. I think what the sentiment there is like, we're going to do what's best for the customers and for the business. And not just what this one person thinks or what this one person wants. Not to mean that we're not going to like listen and, go case by case, but I think it's just this shift of the mindset of like, these are our customers. We all have a part in making sure that they're successful.
And right, Ashley, you also use like customer programs to help get people to opt into get customers to opt into it. And I'm just going to summarize this quickly, but I've done that myself in the past. And what it does is it kind of starts to prove the value that you're offering to customers. Say if you're doing a community or roundtable call or something like that, and it gives something to your teams that they can now trust that there's something of value for your customers. And now all of a sudden they're more open to saying, oh, here are some of my customers. My customers would love doing XYZ, instead of just looking at as you're just trying to find customers and take from them. So it helps with both the customer's point of view and your customer success and sales teams.
Yeah, I think for me, part of the program's language has to do with like customer marketing means different things at different companies. And so people will come in with a certain idea or expectation of what customer marketing means. And that might be different at LeanData. I think maybe what you're hearing is like, it is a little different than what maybe a lot of people are used to. So I didn't want to pigeonhole myself into customer marketing, meaning that my team does only case studies or my team only does expansion or both of those things, because we weren't doing expansion for a very long time at all. And so I think there was often people would be very confused about what I was actually spending all my time on, because if there wasn't a new case study coming out all the time, they were just like, what does she even do? And so it was like, we're doing customer programs that span all stages of the life cycle that help to, drive all these different things. So yeah, there's lots of reasons why, I've played with what we call it here. I know there's a lot of questions in the chat. I don't have it open. So Mary, if there is anything else, let me know. Or do you want me to start diving into like what this looks like at LeanData?
Yeah, actually there doesn't seem to be a lot of questions. It's more comments of people sharing their points of view around that question that AJ had. So that's what you're saying pop up. Give me just a second to read one more. Yep, another comment. Okay, you're good to go.
Cool. So LeanData specifically, here's what we're looking at. So in 2019, we decided, and I didn't decide this was decided by my amazing person who runs our training program. He was already building this out when I started here. So he was building out a LeanData certification. It's like a 6-hour course, 75 question exam, pretty serious, advanced certification. So he was building that out. Where I came in was like, how do we launch this? How do we get customers excited about it? How do we get people to talk about it? How do we get people to take it? So we launched that towards the end of 2019 with great success. Over time, I would say maybe like a year in, maybe even 6 months in, we were able to see that for those people who are getting LeanData certified, we were seeing a higher lift in upsell rates in those accounts, as well as renewals. So we already kind of knew like, okay, the question was, if people get certified, is that attributing it to any revenue? And the answer was yes. So we were like, okay, great. So we started this program in 2019. In 2020, we were going to take the show on the road. It was always going to be in person. Ha ha ha. We had to switch to virtual, which was like actually so amazing, worked so well. And we were getting, especially in those first few months of everybody being at home, we were getting a lot of people certified very quickly. So from there, we built out basically a user group program. So people told us like, great, I'm certified. What do I do with this information? I just learned how to do all this stuff, but now I want to know, how are people applying it? What are other people doing? And so we launched these virtual user groups that we still have today. We call them expert hours. Our certified people are certified experts. So that's expert hour. And then after a while, we were like, okay, certification is great. It's an advanced course, but we have all these people who need like a pre-course, like they're not ready for certification yet, but we don't really have anything to start with. That was really something that we put on our professional services team to do when they were onboarding new customers. So we launched a basic training webinar, and we do that live on a regular basis, and then we have it on demand. And then we were like, okay, great. People are learning how to use LeanData. They're getting certified. But our product team is coming out with updates pretty rapidly, at least once a quarter, if not more than that. And so how do we make sure that people are finding out about what's new with LeanData? So now we do a quarterly webinar where we're trying to increase awareness around all of the product updates. And then we were like, okay, great. We have all this stuff. But like, these are big asks, right? Come to an hour-long webinar, come to an 8-hour certification. Like, how do we create more bite-sized video content that's more of just like, did you know you could do this? Did you know you could do that? And so we started these like tips and tricks video series that we have on our website and on YouTube that are shorter bite-sized videos. And then late last year, we had our annual conference back in person, and we just heard from a ton of customers that they wanted to meet in person again. They wanted to get together. They wanted to talk about LeanData. And so this year we've been kind of testing out, we've been trying different things, but we've put together a community event series. They're lunch and learns where we bring customers together, and we kind of run like virtual user or mini user groups. So we have them like share what they're doing, and they've been really successful. So we've been back in person trying to kind of figure out the right cadence and things like that for these. But you can see that certification is like the sun of our solar system, and everything else has been spun out, and everything kind of is intertwined. They were all created to help drive each other. And so when we think about these programs, we're always thinking about them as like one interconnected system and program that we want people to participate in. And most of our, most successful customers are participating in many of these, if not all of them. So scaling, I want to talk about scaling because I think it's important. So for a long time, as we were building that out, we were just, okay, let's build out a new thing. Let's build out a new thing. Let's build out a new thing. And we needed that. And now I think we're at a place where we're not going to be building out a ton of new things. We're pretty set. I would say we're a pretty mature organization within LeanData in that sense. So we kind of have our programs, they may evolve, the content may change, the cadence may change, but like it's pretty set what we're offering. Now we're looking at how do we make sure that we are taking people on the journey? If they come to the basic training, do they know that certification is the next step that we want them to go on? If they get certified, how do we make sure they're coming to our expert user groups? So we're always looking to make sure, like, how do we take them on the next step? And how do we do that at scale? Because we were at one point where we were just sending emails all the time. Every month we have a new user group. Every month we have this, every month we have that. And we're just emailing. And not only is that like not the most effective way to get in front of customers, but it's also a lot of work to set up that many emails and all of the work that was going into that. So now we're looking at like, we have some automated emails that we send at different stages of the journey based on certain triggers. And, do we have the right messages? Are we reaching the right people there? So we're just kind of looking and tailoring those and seeing where we can get better at a little bit more automation so that we're reaching the right people with the right message at the right time. The other thing that I'll say here is connecting the programs with any other goals that you may have and any asks you may have of your customers. And here's what I mean by that. Let me give you some examples. So connecting programs. When we have people that come to the basic training, oftentimes our certification is a paid course. So some people do get it for free when they buy LeanData, but for other people, they're paying $99. But when people come to basic training, oftentimes they'll get an email from us afterwards or during the course, and we're giving them a free code to sign up for certification. So we're just trying to encourage that next step, but we're very much thinking about it as like a cohesive thing. During certification, so if somebody comes to certification, and one of the ways we offer this is a live Zoom class. So it's an all day 9 to 5, you're on Zoom, they do the training and then they do the exam. During breaks, we are putting up slides that tell them about the user groups, We put up a slide letting them know that they can earn a $25 Amazon gift card if they leave a review on G2 that week. And then after, once they become certified, we're sending them an email with a link to get exclusive swag that only certified people get. We are letting them know how to showcase this certification, this thing that they just spent so much time earning. How do they put that on LinkedIn? How do they share about it on LinkedIn? And then we're also, I think in the email, we also ask them for the review. We give them another chance to do that. The last thing that we do during certification is we survey them at the end. We ask them, how are the instructors? How was the course? How would you, rate your ability to use LeanData? And then we ask them if they would leave us a quote and if they would be willing to be a reference. So I think my point here is that we have them in the room. They're really engaged with us in that moment. We're providing value to them first and foremost, not only in the certification, but we're giving them swag to recognize this achievement that they've just had. We are giving them step-by-step instructions on how to showcase this to your network. And then we're kind of weaving in these other asks. And typically these asks also have incentives behind them, like G2, we're giving them a gift card. So we're really making this a holistic experience for them while they are the most engaged with us. So that's one example. Another example, which is very different, but G2. So G2 is really important for us. We are always trying to drive a lot of reviews. Our space has become a lot more competitive than it was 4 years ago. So this is more important for us than it ever has been to drive positive reviews, to drive a lot of reviews. So there's a lot of work that goes into that. As you all know, there's a lot of email campaigns and things like that. So we're always trying to think about how do we incorporate these asks into other programs. So the certification is one example that's been really successful for us. And then CSAT is another one. So we don't do NPS here. We have a CSAT. We're actually in the process of relaunching it, but we have launched Delighted, which integrates with G2. So as part of the process, when somebody is leaving their response, we can also ask them for a review right then and there. So we're not waiting a week or two to send it to them later. We're doing it as part of the same thing. And like I said, we haven't launched it yet, but I'm hoping that this will reduce the number of email campaigns that we have to drive in the future. Mary, I see your hand up, but real quick on G2, the other thing that I love, there's two things. One, we have set up a Slack channel. So all of our reviews come into a Slack channel. Our product team has taken this as their new way to review these. So I used to have to pull these reviews out, so painful, put them into a spreadsheet, do this once a month or once a quarter, send it out to the team. And now they're getting it in real time. And they're moving quickly, they're tagging each other, they're asking CSMs if they can reach out, they're getting this feedback super quick, and I don't have to do anything anymore, which is a huge time savings. We typically have very positive reviews. So overall for the whole company, it's really great for morale, things like that. The last thing I'll say about G2 that I absolutely love is that I don't know if you guys all use reference pages, but I have built out 10 or 12 reference pages where I'm able to pull specific reviews around certain use cases or personas or product and pull those all together on one page. So a lot of times I'll have a sales rep who will say hey, do we have a case study on this? Or can I get a reference who can talk about this? And usually what I'll say is well, maybe, or I will try, or would whatever. But I also have here's a list of 10 reviews that all talk about this specific topic or something similar. Can you maybe start with this with your prospect? And then we can see if we need a reference down the road or whatever. So that also has been hugely a huge help in terms of scaling and reducing the amount of like one-on-one stuff that we're doing. Go ahead, Mary.
Thank you. Okay, that was a great summarization of how you're using G2. I always like to hear those things, especially when we're not like specifically putting together a webinar to talk about that. So thank
Yeah.
you for sharing. Let's see. I have Shelly Ryder, and she wanted to know if you could explain the expert hour. What's that all about? Is it a way for customers to learn from other customers?
Yes. So our expert hour has, so the idea was that customers wanted to talk to other customers in that they all have a similar, they've all been certified, right? So they're all at a similar level of like, what do they know about our product? And then they wanted to talk about like, how specifically do I apply everything I just learned? And I want to hear real world use cases, and I want to hear how other people are doing it. So the idea was, let's pull together these meetups and let's have customers talk to each other. We typically, the way that we run these is we have a topic that we set ahead of time. And then we do have our head of training. He facilitates the whole thing. So he has slides ready to go, and he will kind of share things with them that they might not know, but he's really trying to facilitate a discussion. Some groups are a lot more open than others. What I would love to get to is a point where it really is like a user group where they're leading the conversations and people are like ready to present. We've had kind of a tough time getting to that point. So right now it's more of just, we're facilitating it. We're kind of guiding the topics, but we are always asking for feedback and ideas of things that they want to talk about. But it's a little more led by us than I would like it to be, if I'm being honest.
Okay. And she also asked if the certification is a big benefit for your customers. Like they'd want to put it on their LinkedIn profile. And if not, then what value do they get from the certification?
Yeah, in our space, I think, people are used to getting like Salesforce certifications, maybe Marketo certifications. So I think what we're trying to do is create something that is as valuable as that to people. It is something that we have seen on job descriptions. We often have our own customers where maybe somebody leaves and then they'll come to us and they'll say like, do you have other certified LeanData certified people that you know of that are looking for a job? Because we'd like to put somebody here. I have heard of people getting hired specifically because they're LeanData certified. So it is really important. People do take it seriously. But at the end of the day, I mean, even if that's not your goal and your goal is just to get to know, like, how do I maximize the value and make sure I'm really using this product for everything it can do, that would be, good enough in your current role.
And I have one more quick question for you. I've seen in the past with my own experience that people who have gone through certification programs and courses with the companies I'm at are so much more likely to join my advocacy program. And it's a huge, like, untapped kind of source for that. Have you seen the same things?
Oh, yes. So we'll just skip to this slide. This is the last slide I have, which is that kind of the numbers that I track. So 45% of all of our customer accounts have at least one person who's certified in them, which is great. This number has actually really increased this year, but that's a huge percent, which is great. 65% of our advocates are certified. So really the reason this is that that's typically where we're asking people if they want to be advocates or if they would be willing to be references. That's usually the group that I'm asking. So this number isn't really surprising. But typically, like, the certified experts are the group of people that I tap into when I'm looking for a reference or if I'm looking for a customer story or something like that. And then 40% of all of our accounts have at least one person who has raised their hand to be an advocate. So for sure, like, I think all of these are very interconnected.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Ari Hoffman once said something about this, about how if they're doing an internal, like a certification, they're investing a lot of time into that. And they're already doing some internal advocacy at their own company for you because they're investing that time. So it just makes sense that we would be able to nurture them to the next step of advocacy.
Absolutely.
I know I cut you a little short. Sorry.
No, it's
There's
okay.
2 minutes left if you have
Yeah.
anything else.
No, I don't.
Wow, you hit that right on the head for timing. That is awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Anybody want to ask any questions or tell Ashley how awesome she did? I know that feels great as a speaker afterwards. You can put it in chat. You can interrupt me. Everybody should.
Yeah, Ashley, I think that was really great and really, it really resonates with me because I'm a one person like customer advocacy department, as probably many are on the call. And I have been thinking about, where's the best place for this function to sit. And this was just really cool to hear kind of how you're kind of taking the best of both worlds, if you will, from the marketing side and customer success. So this was awesome.
Thank you.
Good.
It was really good. Thank you so much. I feel like I learned a lot from your program, just like the way you walked through that all. So I'm sure this is going to be a very popular video afterwards.
Thank you.
Yeah, let me echo that, Ashley. That was really great. I mean, I'm not American, so I'm a Brit, therefore it's difficult to say awesome, but I'll say it anyway. But no, it was really good, and thanks for answering the questions as well. Quite insightful.
Yeah, of course. Thank you.
Okay, well, so I have something to say just quickly about the meeting. I forgot to take the meeting off of the open discussion invite, so that's why I just let everyone in. Our open discussions are only going to be every other week, and I have finally fixed that. And this is our first official masterclass for Club CX, and she hit it out of the park, like way better than any baseball player. I don't really like baseball, so I can say that. My husband watches it so much, and I'm just like, why? It's way better to watch this with Ashley. So, yeah, thank you all for coming, and come join, be a member if you can. And if not, still be in Slack and everywhere else on our open discussion calls. And thank you so much,
It's 3
Ashley.
o'clock.
And there's my creepy end of the hour assistant computer telling me that it's time to let you go. So thank you everyone for coming, and see you all next week.
Have a great weekend.
Thanks,
Yes,
everyone.
thank you.
Bye.